Undertale 2 is not what it seems. Your adventure starts after falling down a hole like in the original game, but a surface level glance reveals that everything is far removed from what it should look like. Characters look and speak crudely, and everything is thickly veiled in a uniquely Gen Z brand of humor. You'd be forgiven for not taking this game seriously after that, but it's feature-rich and is packed to the brim with content. This includes different locales like the ruins, this forest, a library, and even stuff that doesn't mirror the first Undertale like this beach. There's RPG staples like magic abilities, a level up system, equipable items, and even these team-up moves that are arguably the most powerful attacks in the game. Provided you stick with the story long enough though, you can actually find the answers to what went wrong with this world, including why everything looks so strange, the reason everyone talks so odd, and ultimately, the person responsible for its crude and vile transformation. But Undertale 2 is not one to just give out the answers to its giant questions. It takes a fair amount of parsing through its optional content, and even defeating Travis Touchdown from No More Heroes to uncover the truth. To unlock the true ending for Undertale 2, there are several things you'll need to do. Defeating the supposed final boss gives you the choice to spare them or not, and the chance to listen to some of the most moving voice acting I've heard in a game.
Just like you chose to spare recent Master Chirino, you can choose to spare me.
After that wraps up, you can leave Toriel's house to find that a pathway is no longer blocked. You can head north to see one of several optional places in the game. It's here you'll realize Undertale 2 has a ton of respect for your time and progression. NPCs will prompt you when you're about to go past an area of no return. Even after the fact, one of them encourages you to make a separate save file so you can go back to explore other endings where possible. And even if you do end up locking yourself into a certain path after sparing Toriel, there's a character you can talk to that will straight up reverse your decision. The amount of optional content in Undertale 2 is insane. Areas are littered with side bosses, NPCs, and sometimes mini-games. In fact, the next post-game thing I did from this point involved a meta puzzle for Undertale 2's trailer, where you have to stop at certain timestamps to piece together a code to unlock a secret. But to tell you what that secret is right now would be to put the cart before the horse, as at this point in the game, the story has already taken some severe and seriously sharp turns, and it concerns the events of Undertale 1. To be completely transparent with you though, there are not a lot of channels on YouTube that cover fan games, so feel free to subscribe and like this video if you've enjoyed what you've seen so far. You see, around the latter half of the game it's revealed that Undertale 1 in this world is not canon. It's simply a video game. The actual universe this takes place in is Toho's, and the entirety of this setting is simply an attempt to appease a character named Marissa because of her infatuation with Toby Fox's game. This explains a large part of what's going on, like how everyone is an off-kilter, almost Walmart version of their original selves. By no means does this twist turn a parody game into a serious one, but it is still a bold direction to take the plot in, and if anything, gives the entire game a slightly more dreary tone. You'll never have to worry too much about the endgame content drifting too far off into the dark side though, as it's keen to remind you how offbeat things can get. There are bosses in this game that straight up could not exist in most titles. To bring it back around, after piecing together said code, you'll find yourself in an abandoned lab with an old tape. Watching it reveals that Kyoko from the Toho games was transformed into a being resembling Toriel to satisfy Marissa's obsession with replicating the events of Undertale 1. I'd say you can't make this stuff up, but obviously the story was, so yeah. By the way, be sure to revisit the area you fight Toriel in, because from there you can upload your consciousness to what the game refers to as the Undertale 2 servers. Doing so puts you in an entirely new dungeon with a different art style where you can comb through computer files and find neat Easter eggs, items, and the zone's boss, backflip.exe. This fight reminded me that despite the game itself being very strange, mechanically Undertale 2 isn't the most obtuse turn-based RPG out there, though it's still got a couple of neat ideas that elevate it above its competition. Perhaps the most intriguing is the mechanic I mentioned earlier, the buddy system, which allows you to do follow-up moves with certain party members to deal really powerful attacks on enemies. My favorite one being Frisk and Sand's ability to inflict a flurry of random debuffs on a target. Either way, defeating backflip.exe allows us to talk to an NPC inside the computer. He informs us to go to our room in Toriel's house and go to sleep. Doing so prompts another cutscene that blows the lid off many of the mysteries this game was concealing, as if we didn't find enough already. We find out that other Toho characters like Moko have also been affected by Marissa's messed up lens of what the world should be, as they ultimately became backflip.exe from earlier. We also get insight into to who the protagonist is, as before he lost his memories through the fall in the beginning of the game, he was Kai, a simple fisherman who had come to the island Undertale 2 takes place on to slay a mythical creature called the Wish Beast. If all of that wasn't enough lore for you, we additionally find out that Marissa lost her hands in an accident and is unable to picture stuff in her mind due to a condition. Now, not being able to do anything with your hands or your mind might sound like the end of Marissa's creative journey, but like an AI artist, she refuses to let it stop her and recruits the help of an angel named Seraph, who offers to reconstruct the world in her image. But because Marissa's view of the world is so malformed, everything ends up looking really, really weird. After this revelation, we work our way to Honeycomb Beach, where one of the most taxing parts of the optional content lies. There's an area on the far left where you'll basically take on a bunch of different bosses. It's not a boss rush, since you're able to rest between fights, but it can still be very exhausting. The most noteworthy battle of the bunch here isn't even Travis Touchdown. It's against an enemy called Die Hard, an evil clone of Toriel who has a special attack that is literally just... Yep, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that Die Hard is the face of Undertale 2. There's a ton of love for her on account of how it's just so obviously Toriel but with a weird smile and demeanor. She's even making an appearance in the developer's upcoming game, Gimiko. After leaving the boss rush area, we end up at the starting point of the entire game outside a secret door. Going inside reveals a lab where multiple Die Hards are being created. Yes, you heard that correctly. The one we fought earlier is just one of many, and they come in different forms. Also, as a person who has had both career and emotion tied to Omori for more than a year now, I appreciate the very obvious bit that the developer is doing, where these fights are clearly pulling creepy atmosphere from Omocat's game, from the chalky background to the haunting ambience that plays when you fight them. There are genuine moments that are disturbing and heartfelt, though. In particular, there's this scene where one of the Toriel clones tricks you into getting close, only to reveal that she's as deranged and contorted as the other bosses you fought in this area. After defeating each of the bosses here, you'll gain access to the elevator that takes you to Marissa herself. You get a gander at her weird setup and odd assortment of plushies before confronting her head-on. Before the battle can even begin, though, she kills Frisk and sends him to the afterlife. Satan sends him back as a robot. Right after Marissa's health reaches zero, though, she summons a giant mech to fight for her, so in turn, your character transforms into a giant mech as well. As they approach what is probably the final battle, we realize it's not a battle at all, and everything ends up playing out like it's a courtroom scene in Ace Attorney, which... How much longer is this game? So Frisk isn't a robot anymore, he's back to normal, but less crudely drawn than before. Marissa gets frustrated and blows up, and her guardian angel, Seraph, teleports you to my favorite area in the whole game. In the same vein as Hypnospace Outlaw, everything here is filled with inconsistent looking, old school mashups of clip art, weird 3D models, and sprite rips to resemble some early 2000s version of the internet. I always have kind of liked the trope in RPGs where the final area is so otherworldly that it's almost a different art style entirely from the rest of the game, and Undertale 2 definitely manages to do that while staying true to itself. There's more to do here than just fight the final boss, though. There's another fishing area, weird NPCs to talk to with dialogue portraits that look like they were taken with a Game Boy camera or something, and a really, really tedious minigame where you can capture these cats in exchange for permanent stat upgrades. So provided you trapped yourself in this area and you're underleveled, you could technically just grind this part out and be strong enough to beat the final boss.
This is where the Undertale 2 boys become Undertale 2 men.
This is the exact moment Walter White became Heisenberg. I take back what I said earlier about this game being considerate with your time. We are ready to square off against Seraph, the actual final boss of the game, but we get another big reveal on top of the 6 or 7 we've had to process in the last couple of hours. Turns out Sans is actually just one of Seraph's minions. He was supposed to stop Kai before he could get to Marissa, and a glitch early on in his assignment prevented him from finishing the job. Wonderful. Sans' portrait art in the final battle is different now to reflect the revelation. After defeating the boss, you're free to exit the area, go out outside and depart the island to a montage of your party members going their separate ways. A pretty measured and tame ending compared to the final boss area, to be frank. Undertale 2 fans are really passionate about this game. I've heard some pretty compelling testimonies from them, a couple of which actually discovered the game through my first video covering it, which is very flattering to hear. I actually know one guy that said the story moved him to tears. People have said that the story not only exceeded their expectations, but moved everything in their brain 5 inches to the left, whatever that means. So after coming out the other end of this game, do I feel the same way? Has my perspective on RPG storytelling shifted from having experienced everything on offer here? Well, for as big as some of the twists in Undertale 2's story are, they don't really mean much if you haven't had a chance to cozy up to the characters that are affected by said twists. And to do that, you need some human element in the characters that you can cling to in the sea of chaos in the game's world. And Undertale 2 never got its characters under my skin in that way. I never felt closer to the cast or anything after these reveals. Sans being someone completely different, Frisk changing appearances, even the entire world just being a way to comfort Marissa. It all felt too silly and drenched in meme culture for me to really connect with it in spite of itself. I can't say I didn't enjoy parts of it though. I hadn't laughed out loud this much at a game since Disco Elysium. As a video game with mechanics, optional quests, minigames, and more, Undertale 2 does a fantastic job of rising above its initial impression of being just a meme. It continued to surprise me as I fell deeper and deeper down the rabbit hole. I just can't say the same about the narrative. It kind of reminded me of the old joy of finding a Flash game I'd never heard about online. You'd think initially it'd be something super simple to take at face value, but before long you see just how feature-rich it actually is. I'm glad to have experienced this game, and I was also glad to hear that the developer actually plans on making another RPG at some point in the future.